Welcome to my 6th Blender tutorial. Not long ago I came up with the idea of building a search function for the console, so I was going over it to see if I could determine how that could be done. So this tutorial is going to kind of cover some of the things that I went through discovering while I was planning on building the search function. And so one of the things that's going to get searched most often is going to be the BPY. So when you do a search on the BPY, at least on a large scale, you're going to see that. And so the BPY is what puts it out. What type is BPY? Using the type function, you can find out what things are just by putting them in the parentheses and putting this in. So it says BPY is a module. Now what we actually put out though is dir BPY, so let's find out what that puts out. Alright, so it puts out a list, and so that means we need to start with a list if we're going to create some type of search function. And lists can hold strings, integers, booleans, tuples, all kinds of stuff, even objects. And the way to initialize a list would be just the name of the list equals and then your brackets. You could also initialize it like this, h equals, let's see, the string Tom, a number, and maybe an object or something like that, but I'm not going to put that in there. And then it shows you, so it's actually showing you in the same form that you're seeing it here. And let's see, dir list. So that's the kind of things you can do with a list. Like, say, you can append things to a list, you can clear the list, you can copy the list. Count, I think that's, let's see, h dot, I don't remember for sure because count isn't usually used. Not that way anyway. What I'm thinking about is len, L-E-N. This is when you want to find the length of your list. And for the length h it says 2. However, if you want to access one of the items in the list, the initial thing that you're going to say if you want to get the first item out of the list, you're going to need to use 0 because it doesn't start from 1, it starts from 0. And then say we want to get the length of a list like this. And so it's not counting every individual element, it's counting what is actually a list of lists. 1, 2, 3, 4 lists. And it'll do the same thing with a tuple list. But then, if you have a list like this, you're going to get a higher number because they're not separated or anything into groups. So you could do something like this. That's just a comment. No wonder I didn't have it marked as a comment. And so your indexes are going to be like this. This is how you can picture it in your mind. It'll start out with 0 and then go up. And notice that when you do length on this, like if I go LENWFD, it says 8. And as you look here, it only goes to 7. The reason why it only goes to 7 is because it's counting that 0. So that's something you have to look out for in a lot of different types of things that run in Python. Lists, queues, things of that nature. So let's let the computer decide what's for lunch or dinner or whatever. What's for dinner? Let's see, it shuffled it. I didn't use the random that I wanted to use. Ah, pizza! You can find more information on using the random function. It's pretty cool. A lot of good uses for random function. And let's see, I already covered that, so I am not going to worry about that. As a matter of fact, let's just take that out. And so, back to thinking about the search function, we can store this dir bpy as bpy list, and then we'll have it stored in a list. Now, when we get ready to return, say if we find one of these things in here when we're doing our search, we're going to want a way to know that it came from this specific list. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and we know that this is our BPY list, so we're going to insert at position 0 BPY, and then we just go back and we should see BPY in the first position now, and there it is. You can also get it like this. So for each one, we will store them by doing dir, whatever extension from BPY goes on, and then store that in another list. And so I'm only doing 2 lists here just to simplify things a lot. And then for our search list, we're putting these 2 in. Did I run that? Let's see. I didn't run this, so I probably ought to run this. And run this. And then this is our search list. I think the function does all that. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a function. We're going to put in parameters. The parameters are right here. Whenever you hear someone referring to parameters, the parameters are what's being passed into the function. Say if you wrote a simple function to multiply a number by 2, all it would do is like ask you for the number, so one of the parameters would be the number that you're wanting to multiply by 2. Same way here, search item is coming in, the user will type in the search item, and then module name. Module name is going to be a optional argument, that's what they call it, an optional argument. And for optional arguments, they cannot come before arguments that are not optional. And by argument, I mean the same thing as parameter, really. And the way that you would set the value that you want to be the default for whatever's going into the function is by putting an equal sign and whatever it's supposed to be equal to. So you should be able to determine that when you look at this function that what it's going to do if you do not use the optional argument is search within the BPY. And the whole idea of optional arguments is they are optional. You don't have to use them. This is where we're going to check and see if it's BPY. it's going to be BPY, and this is really just a very short function that represents this huge function that I wrote, just to make it a little easier. So first we're going to put it in a BPY list, and then we're going to insert that BPY so that we can tell the user where we found it. And then we're going to do the same thing with bpy.context and put that in so that user can tell where they found it. And then we're going to create a list of lists by taking this and inserting BPY list, which is this right here, and then inserting BPY context list, which is right here, and then it's going to go through these lists searching for the item that you enter in, and it's going to print out that part that tells where it came from, and then it's going to print out the search item if it finds it. Alright, so let's see, I think I put it in here. Yeah, there we go. And then we can just go search data, and then it tells us where it found data. One of the things to note about optional arguments is it's very important that you put the optional argument after one that doesn't have an optional argument, or you'll get this. So if you ever see this error, that's where it came from. You got to have search item before the optional argument. Alright, and one last thing, how do we make it so that it'll tell us that we didn't find a match rather than just sit there doing nothing? What we can do is we can introduce a Boolean value. Boolean values are just true or false. And I use not found in this case because I can set it to true, and then it makes sense down here when it finds something, it changes it to false, so that if it finds something, nothing happens down here. If it doesn't find something, this is still going to be true, so then it's going to go through this spiel. And let's see, did I put that part in there? I don't think I put that part in there, but we can use that. I'll show you that on the real function. So for the actual function, the top part contains instructions for using the function. Note that this function is much more advanced than the function above because it's been worked on more, got more features. Also a little bit more error checking. The coding principles behind it though are the same. If you copy paste this function into the console, then you'll be able to use search A, search, and search X. Just briefly, search is just a normal search, and it searches the BPY by default, but the other functions that it will do are listed here, like AUD, which is audio, math. There's quite a few things in there you might find interesting. Search A searches for whatever is active in the 3D view. Like if you have a cube in the 3D view, then it'll do a search on the cube on what different things you have that you can do with a cube. Search X is search extended. It imports all of the modules, which means that if you're working on a project or something, you probably want to shut down Blender and start it back up again just to clear out all those imported modules if you're actually gonna, you know, save a project or something like that. Search X function is the only search that does import everything, so I usually only use it as a last resort. Okay, so let's take it for a spin. I wanted to show you what happens when you search for something and you don't find it. So we'll put something in here we know it won't find. Alright, so then what it does is it says item not found, searchable standalone modules. So it then gives you the names of the modules that you can search. So like if you don't find it in the BPY, then you got a list right there that tells you what you can search through. And that's in, let's see, right here. This is where I put that in. And where it says not found is true, not found is false, and then checks not found, and then prints out this. Okay, so that's a tutorial number 6. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it very much.